All right. Hello, folks. Good morning, and welcome to our Media Relations 101 training today from our Centralina Learns series. My name is Kasha Thompson, and I'm the Director of Strategic Engagement and Technical Services for Centralina, which means member support and member education. So we are very proud to bring you this presentation today. My colleague Katie has the room set up, but it looks like we have a virtual crowd today, so she's going to be coming online in a different way in just a second. So I'll get us going. I'll ask for everyone to turn on your cameras, please, if you're able to. It makes it a great experience for us as presenters to see you and to see what questions you may have and be able to address those. So it's a safe space. And we understand that you might have competing priorities today, but it just helps us as presenters to see your great faces. So thank you for that. If you could please go around and introduce yourselves, your name, your jurisdiction, your role, and what kind of experience you have with media relations or what you plan to get out of this experience. So I will put those points in the chat and I will ask Ms. Sledge to get us started, and then you can pick somebody else to go next.
Good morning. Thank you. My name is Patricia Sledge. I go by Pat. I am on the Board of Aldermen for the town of Spencer. I've had some experience in the past speaking to the media. I've served as a state president for an organization back in the mid teens, I guess. But I think it's really important that you have to kind of put yourself in a mindset of think about what you might say in advance so that when someone asks for ask you a question about your business or whatever, have a little bit of preparedness for it. Let's go to Alex Sewell. How about you, Alex?
Yeah, thank you, Miss Sledge. My name's Alex Sewell. I'm the Stallings town manager. Just dealt with media a lot in my career. Been a town manager for almost 14 years now. But realized that I never had any formal training on it. So I'm sure a lot that I don't know, would like to work on and improve on. And our mayor, David Scholl, is the chair of Centralina, and he suggested it. So thought it'd be use of our staff. So looking forward to learning here. And I'll pass it along to my colleague, Aaron.
Thank you, Alex. I'm Erin Nichols, also from the town of Stallings. I'm the assistant town manager and town clerk there. Been with the town for 18 years, and I do have a background in public relations and dealing with media. And I do that sometimes for the town, not all the time. But of course, as the town clerk, I do get a lot of the media questions via email, so deal with them frequently as well. So always looking for new information and ways to learn. So happy to be here. Thank you so much. I'll pass it off to another one of our colleagues. Chief Dennis Franks is also on the call.
Chief, I think you're muted.
Looks like he's having some difficulties, so I'll send it to our Assistant Chief, James Perry.
Thank you.
Thanks, Aaron. My name is James Prey. I'm the Assistant Chief with the town of Stallings. I've been the PIO for the police department for probably 5 or 6 years, so I have a lot of experience. But with changing social media and those types of things, just want to make sure we're up to date and doing things to the industry standard. And if Chief is ready and unmuted, we can go to him. If not, I'll pick someone else. Chief?
It says he's having some technical difficulties in the chat.
Okay, gotcha.
So,
Okay. How about Lieutenant Heath Cranford?
Hello, I'm Heath Cranford. I'm Lieutenant of Special Services with the Police Department. I'm here trying to find out what the current trends are for media relations and maintaining the utmost professionalism for our town and our department.
Let's let's go to Bobby. Bobby Williams. Good to see you, friend.
Yes, hey everybody. I am Bobby Williams. I'm the assistant town manager in Huntersville, and kind of like what was said earlier, trying to keep up with just the trends. And Lord knows, social media, I feel like changes media relations every day. So, really neat that y'all are doing this.
Where would you like to go, Bobby? Who would you
Yeah,
like to
sat
pick
down and call
on?
someone out.
Yep.
Let's go. Let's go to Mayor David Scholl, unless he's already gone. I got on a few minutes late.
I have not gone. Can you hear me? Because you can't see
Yes,
me.
sir.
Mayor of Stallings, been on board for, I don't know, 11 or 12 years now as mayor. First year, learning a lot as the mayor. It is a different role than as a councilman. And I think I'm very much looking forward to some formal introduction to the media relations, because I know from experience that what I want to say and what I should say are two different things. And I need to know what I should say to the media and not what I want to say. So that's about it for me. Oh, and let's go to Fred Teague, which is probably Jennifer, I'm guessing.
Hey everybody, my
Praise
name is
God.
Fred Teague. I'm a detective slash community officer here in Stallings. Been doing it about 5, 6 months now, and I'm just hoping to learn a little more and maybe grow our social media side of things because I am in charge of that as well. So I'm hoping to get that a little bit better. But yeah, I'm excited for the class. I guess I'll pass it to Detective Sergeant Brooks.
Thank you for the nice introduction, Teague. I am Detective Sergeant Nicholas Ivy Brooks. I also work for the town of Stallings. I oversee our criminal investigations division, which also are one of the branches that we have is media relations. And I'm taking the class to learn a little bit more. And with that, I will pass the baton to Gretchen.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Gretchen. I am not with the town of Stallings. I serve as founder and executive director of Piedmont Music Therapy. We are a 501c3 that services York and Mecklenburg counties through music therapy treatment, and would love some more learning related to clarity since we have been receiving a lot more grants recently, and so there's just a lot of need to have a consolidated interview or press release, all those things for transparency's sake. So I'm really looking forward to this webinar. Thank you. And I trust facilitators to let me know who's next. I'm almost back to my work location from an offsite meeting. Thank you.
Thank you for that clarification. Let's see. Casey, have you gone yet? I don't think so.
Hi, I'm Casey. I am with the town of Harrisburg and right outside of Charlotte in Cabarrus County. I am actually just at Centralina. We rolled up and we're joining virtually on site. And I have our communications manager here, Jared. So we have our whole comms team here today.
Great. And Katie will be right there to take care of you. We just moved virtual because we didn't have anybody here. So it's a little bit more intimate to do it this way. So we will set you up and you will be well taken care of. So let's go then to Lathan.
Hey everyone, I'm actually an intern here at Centralina. I run the media and the socials for the Clean Cities and Fuels Coalition here at Centralina Regional Council. I just enjoy being a sponge and soaking up, every chance and every opportunity I get to learn at Centralina. And I am interested in potentially pursuing a career in public service. So that's why I attended and I'm happy to be here.
We love our interns, so thank you. Reagan.
Hi, everyone. Good morning. My name is Reagan Murphy. I am the Senior Transportation Planner for the City of Belmont, and we recently have been successful in securing a couple large federal grants for some of our transportation projects, which is very exciting, but comes with it a lot of media attention and interest in learning about some of our programs, and it's just not something that I've ever been trained in. So looking forward to learning a little bit more about the best way to message and communicate some of our work.
Great.
And I'll turn it back to Centralina folks to popcorn.
At this point, has Fuller, not to be confused with Bueller, Fuller.
Yes, ma'am, I'll go. My name's
Yeah,
Ryan
yeah.
Fuller. I am the lieutenant with the Stallings Police Department. I don't really know much about media relations. I've taken ample amount of classes regarding media relations. However, I've never really had to speak to the media. I understand the importance and the transparency that comes in relation with discussing media related topics. I'm a participant in this class just to gain further intel and hopefully apply it one day.
And Max, I saw you just jumped on, not to pick on you right away, but we're just going around popcorn and sharing our name, jurisdiction, your role, and what experience you may have had or what you'd like to get out of this training.
Hey, thank you. I work for the town of Stallings. I'm the planning director. What I want to get out of this is a better understanding on how to talk to the media if we were, kind of to be contacted out of the blue, and how to prepare and handle that as best as we can.
Great. And is there anyone who has not gone? Okay, we'll let it slide if you're hiding in the shadows. Thank you all for being here. There's a wide range of experience. I love to see our emergency responders here. And then Katie, you're all settled now. I'll let you introduce yourself as well.
Absolutely. I'm Katie Brewer. I'm the communications administrator here at Centralina. I've been here for about 6 months, but I have 8 years of experience in PR and media relations. At my first job, I was kind of thrown into on studio segments. So I have a lot of experience with talking to media, both in studio, on site, in print. And in my previous role at an agency, I conducted these media trainings and crisis communications training. So if that's something you're interested in, we can come certainly to your board and do a more personalized, tailored session. But I will let Kasha kick us off.
Excellent. Thank you. Yeah, we're happy to come by and go in depth. This is a 101, so it's very high level. Again, I'm Kasha Thompson, and so my background is that I've worked in communications for, 25 years now. I was in media relations for Charmex Schools, where each person of the media relations team was managing at least 50 media calls a week and turning 3 stories per reporter sometimes in a day. And then I joyfully went to Cabarrus County, where it became more of a proactive pitch approach for 20 different departments. And I was communications director there for 10 years before moving to strategy and performance management and then on to Centralina. So I'm happy to share all of my life lessons with you and make it so you're comfortable working with the media. I think the important thing to remember is that the media has a job to do. And so it's not necessarily the best thing to run or be fearful about it, but how can you partner and get your message to come across and position your organization in the best way possible? And in the case of public safety folks, make sure that the situation does not get in the way of life or property, right? So here are some things we're going to accomplish today. We're going to look at why media relations matters, the cycle of developing a story. We want you to kind of know what's happening on the reporter side of things and jump into their shoes for a little bit. We're going to talk about crafting those messages and how to deliver them, some interview basics, some distribution channels, and then a recap. So this is, again, very basic. We're not going to do any mock scenarios in this training. We're just going to give you a vocabulary so that if you come back, if you have additional interests, if you want to participate in a more in-depth situation, you're prepared for that and you know enough to be dangerous, right? To represent your organization well, or to know to call us if you find yourself in a situation and we can work through it together. So does that sound like a plan for everyone? Okay. If you have questions along the way, if you want to wait until we're done with a slide or done with a section, and then ask a question, that would be fine, and we'll take questions at the end as well. So we'll go ahead and jump into our next slide. So where stories come from? A lot of times working in government, I know we used to have like the Charlotte Observer would, during the summer, position their cubs or their interns to just pull public records requests on random topics or random people. And they would search through those records requests to try to find a story. So sometimes it comes by way of a topic that's of interest to folks, and sometimes they're just out fishing, right? But that's the beauty of our public records process and the sunshine laws that exist to make sure folks have access to it. They're also looking at your meeting agendas, right? They're looking at the topics that are on there. So if it's on the agenda, especially elected officials and managers, just think about what those talking points might be before a meeting, before the discussion, and after the discussion, right? They're getting tips from media, from residents. Of course they are, whether it's social media or direct phone calls, especially those see, click, fix type of issues. That's a very easy way for them to be an advocate for the community and get amplify a voice that may not have been heard. Your employees, if you think about it, they can be your biggest champions, or they could take their uncertainty to the media. So it's important to think about, as you develop messages for the public, what kind of messages do you want to share internally so that your employees either know what to say if somebody asks them, or what the boundaries are of speaking out about certain issues. When it comes to council members, as you know, you all are elected officials. So not only are you looking at topics that are impacting the business of the organization, but you're also discussing larger, broader topics. And usually your communications staffers are focused on the organizational side, and you will need to work independently with the media on things that relate to those broader issues. You want to send out press releases and proactive pitches to tell those great stories, the success stories for your organization. And then social media posts, community complaints, the neighborhood sites, right, that get a lot of traction. Believe it or not, members of the media live in our communities, right? So as they experience things as your neighbors or your constituents, they are also finding ways to pitch those stories to their bosses. And then, of course, if one media outlet covers something, we can be darn sure that others will follow in most situations. So those are some of the ways that we thought about it coming to life. You may have other experiences, but these are the most likely places where stories will come from. And then talking about what makes something news. So its impact. If you're talking about something that affects a large number of people, then that will be a news story. And I want you to think about the fact that you might have opportunities to proactively pitch stories that are national stories. And you're like, man, this is a national story, and we do it really well here locally. Those are opportunities to proactively pitch the media on things that are happening in your community, taking a national or regional story and making it local with people they can talk to that are having a similar experience. Or maybe your organization is really good at managing this not great thing that's happening, but you all do it well and you're proud to show that. And that's something you can discuss as well. The timeliness, it's something that just happened. People are still trying to understand and wrap their heads around it. That would be of interest to folks. Conflict, of course. I participated in a media panel. I was in the audience, and a news director from one of the local stations said, "Don't call me when you open your vineyard, call me when it floods." So anytime there's a conflict, that is definitely of interest to them. And then novelty, you want to make sure that, if you all have something unique or it's a great local story that's just you, that tells your organizational story or your community story, that is definitely something to pitch. And then again, proximity, close to home, taking that national impact and making it relevant. Right. So looking at the process that the reporter is going through at their newsroom as the day evolves. So they are getting your press releases, they're monitoring social media, they're having their coffee in their neighborhood, and they're picking up on things that are happening. Early in the morning, the first thing they do is they go into the office and they have a budget meeting. And at this meeting, all the reporters are pitching the news director on different stories that they'd like to pursue that day. And the news director is determining which story is going to happen, which is going to lead, and what angle they want to take. And they all work this out in the meeting. So you'll usually get a phone call around 9 a.m. 9 to 10 a.m. And that's the reporter who just ran out of their budget meeting and now they've got to get started on their story, which is due sometimes 4 o'clock, sometimes 5 o'clock, sometimes it could be for the noon broadcast, right? And they have a tighter deadline to get through. So they'll reach out and contact you after the budget meeting. It's important to remember if they're reaching out, it's already been assigned. There's a space in the news broadcast and the story will happen. So it's not necessarily a case where you can say, well, we're just not going to participate in this story and then move on with your day. If they've reached out, especially after the budget meeting, they will run the story. So you have to decide, are we going to be part of this and make our message heard, or are we going to be otherwise impacted by a story that runs without our side of it? So what you'll want to do is really understand what the reporter is trying to get to, who else they're talking to, what angles they're looking to pursue, how many interviews they're looking to do. We'll get into a little bit of that a little bit later. But you're going to help them develop their story with images and interviews and context. So that when they go back to their truck or they go back to their computer or they're sitting downstairs in your lobby area editing this story, your messages get across and that they're telling the accurate story. And then, of course, they put it out there and it goes out on social media and they have another part of their job. Once the story is out, they and their social media team at the station are, of course, trying to get as broad a reach as possible. And they're approaching it from a marketing standpoint. Something to note, Nielsen sweeps happen February 1st to February 28th, April 25th to May 22nd, June 27th to July 24th, and October through November, October 31st through the end of November. So your February and October sweeps, November sweeps, are the periods of time, the biggest periods of time, where your news stations are monitoring how many folks are watching the stories. And this is how they are able to judge how many people are watching the station, and that turns into advertising revenue. So that is the time to be slightly cautious about the phone calls that come in. I remember that's when we used a cotton swab across a bus seat and found 24 different types of bacteria, right? Those are when those stories come out. So be cautious or informed about calls that happen in February and November. Those are sweep stories, most likely. So understanding the media landscape. You have your print and digital news, your traditional outlets. You have your broadcast and radio, and then online and wire services. Wire services are paid subscription type memberships where you can put information out and it goes all across the country or the world, actually. And these services, they have updated media lists. So if you're working on a certain topic or you're trying to promote something that's related to a large initiative, you can very quickly find reporters all across the world who are interested in what you're trying to pitch. With local stories, you have your media desks, your beat reporters, and you'll want to make sure that those contact lists are updated pretty regularly, a couple times a year at least, because so many times reporters are moving in and out of the area. So you'll want to stay on top of your media lists or subscribe to a wire service, but but probably not likely something a local government would do. And then self-publishing, which is my number one recommendation. Make sure your staff is equipped and understands how to write their own stories and publish them. Anytime you can go directly to the consumer, to your constituents, it's a great way to publish information, and media might pick up on it and then follow up with their own story. Responding to media inquiries. So when the call comes, answer it. It's just take it as any other constituent call, right? Understand who is calling. Make sure you know what the situation is they're asking about and get the essentials. So for me, I would typically collect all the information I can from that initial phone call and not provide an answer. I would say, okay, thank you. What's your deadline? I'll get back to you. It is perfectly fine to get back to a reporter after you've informed yourself. The last thing you want to do is talk off the cuff and not respond with factual information or lead them onto a story that was never the case. You could be talking about one thing and then you confirm with staff, oh, they actually meant something else. And you have this totally different idea of what the story was supposed to be. So get the essentials and tell them you'll call them back in a timely manner. And then loop in your PIO or your supervisor, whatever your media policy recommends. But when you loop them in, they're doing a lot of things behind the scene. For instance, they're reaching out to partners to coordinate messages. We had a call from a news outlet a few weeks ago about a good thing, a good project that was happening, but it involved something that was happening at one of the cities. So rather than responding ourselves, we coordinated our response with the city. So it's important to know what your partners are doing, whoever they may be, especially with police. You're going to want to coordinate with your incident commander. If it's a large scale situation, it may be that you need to coordinate with the administrative side of things. It may be that you need to coordinate with EMS, right? But you'll definitely want to stay in your own lane and coordinate the response. They're also going through your staff when you report to the PIO or your supervisor. They're going through social media or websites to understand how widespread the situation is and to learn from other lessons. So if it's a situation of some sort of scam, they might say, well, this isn't isolated to our community. It happened here, but this is a wider problem. And that gives a little context to the story. It frees up some, not only liability, but it paints a broader picture so that your folks in your community don't feel isolated in a situation like that. They're also coordinating with HR and finance and management and the board. It might be that this is a story that involves an employee that was put on suspension or relieved of their duties. There are a lot of HR things that come along with that. There might be family notifications. There may be some things that need to get tightened up before media runs the story. Maybe it's about an employee who did a certain action, and while you're trying to manage the story, you also want to protect their private life, and they might need to take their social media offline or something to that effect. So there are a lot of things happening behind the scenes as the stories take shape. Your PIO is also working to determine who will deliver the message. A lot of times the default is, well, this is the director, and the director will speak on behalf of the organization. But if it's a story that involves an interpersonal relationship with members of the community, something about how customer service happens or how a process happens that's very close to the community, think about your frontline folks. They may not be the top of the organization, but they're the most informed on how these processes work, and they know how to speak to community members. And sometimes that comes across in a beautiful, beautiful way on camera. And then your PIO is working to determine if stakeholders need to be informed ahead of the public messaging. So is there a need for a board memo? Is there a need for email to staff or to certain constituents to make sure they're informed and have your side of the story before it runs publicly? And then they're also working to determine, is a follow-up necessary? So is this going to be a one and done, or do we need to do, in the case of an emergency situation, are we going to do a hourly briefing to keep folks informed? So once you loop in your PIO, they'll get back to you. You'll work together to create some very basic messaging to determine what the visuals may be. And then one of you will follow up with the reporter, set up the story, and then if it is you and you do the interview and the PIO is not there, or there's not a manager there, make sure to follow up with them after the interview and say, hey, this was my experience. These are the questions that were asked. I think the story is going to be great, right? Any questions? Okay, cool. So crafting your key messages. I have a very simple formula I love to use and explain to folks. There are 3 things you want to include in any story. It's informational, motivational, and behavioral. A lot of times we think of communications as just saying the words to get us through a situation, and that's not the case. Communications professionals are kind of behavioral scientists, right? We're trying to change an action or a reaction. So if you think about the seatbelt campaign, right? Those are communications folks who came up with a campaign to change a behavior that happens to save lives, right? So as you're approaching the media, as you're responding to media requests, think about what the action is that you want the agency to take, or you want people to know the agency is taking, or what the public should do with the information you're giving them. You can tell them all day long about your program, but if people are not given a call to action, they're not going to take an action. So think about what those call to actions would be. So let's start with the what happened, the facts, neutral, verifiable core of the issue. This is your who, what, where, when, why, and how. And I stress the why. It's incredibly important that the public understand how this relates to them. And then your motivational. What are 3 things you want everyone to know about the situation that's going to make them interested in participating or understanding what's happening? And this is that relationship you have with folks. You're going to want to focus on your key stakeholders, because they're the ones that are going to take action. So for instance, if it's a story about a program in your parks for children, your audience, your stakeholders are mothers of children, not the children, right? That's a give me situation. But as you discuss more complex issues, you're really going to need to think about who those stakeholders are and what matters to them. How are you going to motivate them to believe this is important to them? And then behavioral, again, are the actions or steps you want folks to take, or that you want to communicate your organization is taking. And so make sure you have these talking points written out and agreed to. I'm going to put that asterisk there throughout this presentation, because remember, any interview you're doing on behalf of your organization extends beyond the work of your department. It impacts the entire organization and your reputation. So make sure these are things that you run past folks, not for control, but for awareness, and to make sure you have informed talking points, because the last thing you want to do is go on camera or say something to the media and then have to go back and clarify that that's not actually the full picture, and it could change the story in a very drastic way. All right, so the reporters, they need a few things from you to make sure they have the story. Again, if they know that you are helping them do their job, if you're helping them do it quickly, then you're going to get all these great bonus points, right? Because they see you as a partner. Make sure you know what their deadline is and when they have to get these interviews so that they can have them edited. Make sure you understand, are they going to need to have a setup on site for a live shot at 5 o'clock? So they might film the story at 3 o'clock and then come back to the site at 5 o'clock and stand in front of it. You know, we've all seen the pictures of reporters standing in front of dark parking lots, right? They may need to come back and have a nice place for their live shot. Making sure that they have accurate information, confirm the information in as many places as you can, because you want them to have names correct. You want them to spell them properly. You want them to have a timeline. If there's, we're not getting into crisis communications here. That'll be a different session. But if you want to do the best work in a crisis situation, put together a timeline of events that happened that triggered from the very start of a situation so that you have that information. You don't necessarily need to share it, but you as an organization need to know what happened and when, and that will help you pull together a great story. Human contact, having somebody that's had that personal experience will change the vibe of a story 1,000%. You can talk about folks getting Operation Heat Fan Relief fans, right? And how the jurisdiction is handing out fans to residents. But if you are able to show a resident who's in their house, their air conditioner is broken and they have a fan in the window and that's all they have, that's keeping them comfortable during the summer months, that tells a very different story. And I guarantee the folks that you work with, that you're supporting in your community will want to tell the story of how they were helped because they want others to benefit from it as well. I will give the caveat, I always have media release statements available if anyone shares a story that's personal in nature rather than a public event that they're attending. If you're going into their house and showing their house, I would have a media release for them to sign. And certainly in the case of human services, and we're not getting into the human services side of things today, but that's a whole other issue, right? What you can say and cannot say. And then making sure you have clear, quotable answers. A lot of times when doing interviews, people use jargon. They talk in long paragraphs that can't be cut up. The reporter's listening to what you're saying. They're writing down keywords and they're deciding where they're going to chop your talking points as you're making them. So if you speak clearly, keep it short. And my favorite point to say is to talk from the heart. If you talk from the heart, you will always be okay. Now, the flip side of that is to remember the reporter can only use what you tell them, right? So if you are dealing with a particularly challenging situation and you're not sure how in depth to go, stick to the talking points and repeat them in different ways. You can, after a certain point, the reporter will say, okay, thank you, I have all I need. Because if you've said the same thing 20 times, they know that they're not going to get you to go past what you're comfortable talking about. And to that end, make sure you stay in your lane. Don't talk about what the EMS is doing if you're police. Don't talk about what another jurisdiction is doing. Only talk about and represent your organization because you would not want to let somebody speak on behalf of your organization. All right, some media terminology to know. On the record and off the record. Can any of our elected officials tell us an example of off the record working where something was held tight and never used? Probably not, right? Off the record, you can give some background, but you might want to say this information is coming to you on background rather than off the record if you are comfortable saying it. Remember that off the record does not exist. It's something that you can maybe wade into if you trust the reporter and you've been working for a long time, but that's an awful risky position to take. Assume that everything is on the record, especially in this day and age. As you know, you can go to the grocery store on a trip unrelated to work and have something recorded and it impact your professional career these days. So again, just understand that you're always on the record. If it's something that you need to provide background on, make sure that they understand it's background information. If it's an embargo, then you're working with one media outlet and you're not sharing information beyond that outlet, or those set outlets. And they're holding the information and developing usually a fairly big story. This will usually happen with print publications. So they're developing a comprehensive package with several different stories, big media context, and they're holding on to it until you're ready to go. But when you're ready to go, they're going to hit it and it's going to be out there for everyone. It's an excellent tool if you have certain situations. Your sound bite, you want to keep it short, 8 to 12 seconds, just something that you can see in a promo, because really that's all folks are going to remember, right? So make it a great sound clip. No comment, again, it reads as guilt or evasion. So think about what you can say instead. And we'll get into a few of those in just a second. And then B-roll. Anytime a television outlet comes out, they're going to want to shoot some video footage of people filing their papers or walking down a street. Sometimes I choose not to do B-roll, but most of the time it's of no serious consequence. Like, just think about your executives, especially, and the type of B-roll that they're shooting of them, and make sure that your executives are set up well, or that if it's your own story, that your own situation is set up well. So, you just don't want it to look too unprofessional. And then we have some more terms to know. I think as a communications professional, and our folks on the call who do this day in, day out can vouch for the fact that your teammates are walking up to you, or your leadership is walking up to you and they're saying, we need a press release or a media release to go out on this topic. And you have to find a way to politely say that the situation has no media value, that nobody's going to take the press release and post it. You can certainly put it on your website as an article, but that's not the way to get the information across, nor is it effective. So we wanted you to be aware of all the different types of ways that your communications folks may pitch message delivery. One is a press conference, and press conferences are great if you have a story that every news outlet is going to call you up and ask for an interview. Instead of spending 3 days doing interviews day in, day out, maybe fumbling messages between them, to stay consistent and deliver great information, consider a press conference. And when you have a press conference, it's a controlled environment. These days, you can record it, make sure that you have all the same information as the media and put it out on your outlets. At the same time as the media does it, you're usually going to have a press release to go out. So when folks show up for the press conference, you're handing them a media release so that they have all of the names, all of the facts. It could be a one-pager with facts if you don't have time to put together a full press release, but you're giving them everything they need to walk out of that room or that space with the full package. And that also may mean in certain situations after the press conference, you have folks available to do one-on-one interviews with them. So what's a one-on-one? That is when the reporter asks questions to one person. So it's one reporter and one interviewee. You don't ever want to put the situation where a reporter is interviewing 2 or more people at the same time, because you want to use a microphone and you want to make sure that people come across. So there can be more than one person in the shot, but you're only going to have one person ever do an interview if it's a one-on-one situation. If it's not well, even with a press conference, there's only one person at the podium, right? So think about the logistics of capturing audio and video and what they're working with. So in your one-on-one, it's just you and the reporter, and you're having a conversation, adding context to the story. Your media release is a full message that can be published on its own. Then you have a statement. This would be in a commentary situation, or if you have limited information, hey, we'll get back to you with more, but this is what we have for right now. Or maybe this is all we're going to say on the topic, and limit it to that. Media advisory is a tool that a lot of folks are not aware of. If you have an event the media should attend, then you would send out a media advisory, and it's telling them, hey, show up at 10 a.m. at this Lunch Plus site, and you're going to get to watch seniors receiving free meals that are tied to this certain situation, right? Or you're opening a park, or you are whatever your event is. This is an event you want the media to come to, where they can get footage and then publish the story after the fact. Now, you might also do a press release to tell the community, but a lot of times, certain events, you just need to send a media advisory and say, hey, come on down and do a story on this. And then an op-ed is a letter that's written by your organization. It's tied to a person and their name, although sometimes they're ghostwritten, but it's definitely coming from the author's point of view, and it's marked from being an outside source. So the media will not claim authorship of the document, of the content that's being delivered. A lot of times, if you send out a media release these days, they'll write staff reports, or if you're going through media stories and you see staff reports in the byline, that means that it was submitted as a press release. So that's a good way to know that the information you're reading is probably delivered from a source outside of the paper, but they're just reprinting it, which I used to take kind of offense to. You know, we went to the trouble of writing this and I want you to do a story on it. But then you get used to it. It's just the way media works now. And what a gift it is that they're telling your story in a way that you find appropriate. Any questions about those different techniques? Okay. All right. So building the relationship before you need it. So a lot of times, especially in public safety, there are relationships that form between reporters and your public safety folks. They're out at the middle of the night when everything is happening, and they're developing friendships around these tragic situations a lot of times, and there's a lot of trust that builds up very quickly. So we'll get to that in a second, but that's one situation. A lot of times your PIOs are developing relationships with the reporters because they're working day in and day out trying to both pitch and publish stories. So they're often times closer to us than our own colleagues. And then you as elected officials have your own relationships with reporters. And then management has relationships with reporters, especially in smaller jurisdictions where folks have climbed the ladder or they're staying for decades. They become relationships that grow just like any natural friendship. So when a reporter pitches a story and the news director says, "Hey, it's time to go. We're going to use this story. Go get us some sources." They're calling each one of those folks. They're calling their public safety folks. They're calling the elected official. They're calling the PIO. And then they're also calling the manager or whomever they have at the organization. And they're going to run with the folks who get back to them fast and with the best story. And it's great that you have relationships with reporters, and I highly encourage it. But just make sure you don't assume you're the only one the reporter is calling, and check in with your PIO, again, to coordinate the message from the organization. Know their deadline. Before you hang up that phone call, figure out when the story is going to run, what they're looking to do, who they're working with. I know we've said that a couple times already, but it's very important. And then when it comes to speaking, make sure you have confirmed facts. Never run on a hunch. Do not speculate. I think that's where we get in trouble a lot of times is folks say, well, I guess it could be this. Or when you're taking national stories, the national stories, we might make assumptions as consumers of the same story, and you don't want to provide a comment based on assumption you're making. So, if the federal government does something or the state government does something, understand the facts before you're responding rather than responding as a consumer with assumptions. If you do have errors, which happen all the time, just correct them. Reach out and say, oh man, this is an error. Or if the story publishes, reach out to the reporter and say, man, you published this and you used the incorrect fact. If they do not get back to you, if they don't make the correction, then you have every right to call the news director and say, hey, this information was published and it's incorrect, and we need to fix that right away. Now, going back to the relationships, I want to point out the fact that you should be probably cautious, especially public safety folks. Appreciate the relationship that you have with the reporters, but they're going to form those bonds with the people that they walk up to at the crime scene or at the incident location, right? The first person that they see at the tape, and they're going to chat them up. And a lot of times, public safety folks are interested in the media process and what's happening. So just be cautious and just let them do their job, nod your head, direct them to the right person. That's key, is to make sure you understand that your frontline folks know, whether it's public safety or anybody in the organization. If there's a situation, let your frontline folks know they are not to respond to the reporter, to just politely direct the reporter to the person who's designated to respond. Yep. Any questions on that? Okay, Katie.
Yeah. Thank you for that, Kasha. So Kasha touched on a lot of things, but what happens once you are approved, you go through all these steps, you have your message, you've talked to your PIO, you've been through all of the steps to get to the interview. There are some things that you should know, right? The logistics. Obviously, you're going to confirm the topic, the format, the deadline. Is this print? Is this broadcast? When do you need this by? These are all things that you control. They're all in your power. You also have the right to ask who else is being interviewed. You'll want to draft your key messages before you go on air or before your interview. Include some supporting facts in case you're asked about them. I always like to anticipate the toughest questions that you could be asked. What's the worst that could happen? And then what's the best that could happen? Prepare yourself for those hard questions. And that doesn't necessarily mean that you are going to be asked them, but just that you are prepared for that. And then you have those messages in your pocket. We'll touch on some bridging techniques as well later in the presentation. So in case you are asked those tough questions, how you can go about answering them. And my biggest one that I want to emphasize is to practice out loud, not just in your head. It's really delivering your messages is a lot different when you say it out loud than in your head. So whether that is in front of a mirror or practicing with a coworker or your significant other, a friend, anything, saying it out loud will help you understand and kind of get the flow of the key messages down. When I was doing some in-studio interviews, I had like a 45-minute drive, and the whole way there, I was just continually saying these things in my head so that by the time I got there, I felt very confident and comfortable that, no matter what I was going to be asked, I knew my key messages, I had them down, but it still sounded like I was, speaking from the heart and it wasn't too rehearsed. When it comes to the interview, obviously there are logistics that happen, right? And you want to know where it will happen, when will it happen? Is it in person? Is it on phone? Is it video? Asking all those things, and the reporter should let you know, but just having it in your control and asking them. Visual backdrop is very important for your Zoom interviews, making sure it's not green screen, or what is the appropriate place that you should be in for the interview. Again, going back to who on your team should be present, looped in, notifying your PIO, making sure that you find the right spokesperson for that. So sometimes it could be you, and sometimes it could be someone else that should speak on it. Having any materials on hand. Think about, if you need a brochure or anything to demonstrate something that you're talking about. Always set a firm time for the interview in advance. Sometimes the reporter will give you their cell phone contact, and that's always helpful if you're meeting up with them for the first time somewhere unfamiliar. And then this is also important. You have the right to record them recording you. So feel free to do that. Obviously, just give them a heads up and let them know. Say, hey, I'm just going to record this if that's okay with you. But that is definitely in your right, and you have the control over these interviews. I think that's the key thing to walk away with. So some tips for during your interview. It's kind of it's very similar to a job interview. You want to pause before answering. You want to lead with your key messages. So going back to those key messages, the who, what, why, when, how that Kasha had spoke about, touching on those first and not burying them. Speak in plain language. We're going to really emphasize this. Avoid all of your acronyms, your jargon. Your audience won't know it. And if you do use an acronym, it's okay. Just explain what the acronym is. We work with a lot of police and fire teams for some of their assessment centers, and a lot of them use a lot of jargon and acronyms, and some people just really aren't. We don't know what that is, and so explaining that just really helps your credibility and your trust. Stay calm and composed. Your tone, body language. Practice some breathing techniques ahead of time. It's really easy, and this is why we recommend practicing in front of a mirror, because you don't know what you're fidgeting, or if you're rocking back and forth or something that may appear that you're nervous. So just be mindful of that. And again, practicing in person in front of a mirror is really helpful. Answer and then stop talking. Don't feel like you need to use the silence. You don't need to ramble. Just hit those key messages. And then Kasha touched on this too, but correct errors immediately. If you misspeak, just calmly restate the information. That again, you control this interview, and you control, the message, and you are valid in saying, "Oh, I'm sorry, let me correct that. It's actually, X, Y, Z." Any
Katie,
questions?
I want to jump in and share one more thing. At the
Yeah.
end of every interview, the reporter will say, "Is there anything else you'd like to share?" And it might be as you're taking off your microphones, you feel like the interview is kind of done. That is when the most sensitive information jumps out of people's mouths into those microphones, right? The interview is not done until they are packed up and out the door. So if they ask, "Is there anything else you'd like to add?" Unless there's a talking point that was not clearly articulated, say, "No, thank you. We're good. We're good here." And it might be that your PIO jumps in and adds something at that point. And to Katie's point about correcting errors immediately, not so much with television, but you can start and stop with television. That's fine in the middle of a talking point. Stop yourself from saying the words before they come out if you are aware of what's about to happen. With a print interview, it's perfectly okay to ask the reporter, "Can you repeat back what I just said? I just want to make sure I'm clear and I'm stating the facts accurately." Perfectly acceptable. They want to make sure you have a good quote as well.
To that point too, you can ask the interviewer, the reporter, you can ask them some of the questions that you will be asked. So it's completely valid to write them, or when you're on the phone with them talking ahead of the interview, especially if it's recorded or live video. It is in your right to ask them, what questions will you be asking me? And that definitely helps with your developing your key messages. Sometimes they'll give you the questions point blank, and sometimes they'll just kind of give you, "Oh, we'll talk about this topic, and I just want to know your stance on it." So some tips when you are interviewing, specifically for virtual and on camera. So these are your broadcast, your live, your Zooms. When you are interviewing, it's easier to think about it like you're just having a conversation with a reporter. So you look at the reporter, you won't look at the camera lens unless they tell you to, but very rarely you'll be looking directly at the camera or stating something directly at the camera unless it's like a press conference or PSA or something. You'll be looking at the reporter. They'll always ask you to spell your first and last name and give your title just so that they have that accurately when they go in their back edits. You'll definitely want to sit up, stand straight, watch your hand gestures. This is really easy to, I know a lot of us talk with our hands. I have my hands like clasped in front of me right now. So sometimes just keeping them clasped in front or behind can help you from fidgeting. Wear solid colors, avoid busy patterns like this. Stripes and kind of polka dots can make your eyes, the viewer's eyes, kind of cross. For virtual and Zoom interviews, definitely test your camera beforehand. Get on, an hour ahead of time, a couple days, test it out, have someone else make sure that your audio works, that your visual works. Keep the camera at eye level. If you have a ring light, that's great to use. Just be mindful always of like what's behind you. Sometimes there's like little figurines or something that may not be appropriate. So just keep that in mind in context of the interview. Mute your notifications, close any tabs, windows, eliminate distractions. And then you can have your key messages just visible off the screen, but do not read them. It's pretty clear when you can tell that someone is reading them. If you are doing a virtual Zoom interview from your office, make sure you find a closed room, limit the distractions, maybe put a sign on the door that says like, please like be mindful in an interview, do not enter. If you're at home, I know sometimes we work from home. If you're at home doing an interview, make sure that, again, your distractions are limited. If you have a dog that barks at the mailman like mine, maybe arrange for the dog to be in a closed room so that your distractions are limited. I remember, I don't know who else has seen this, but it was a interview a gentleman did on BBC. He was in his home office, and all of a sudden his toddler comes barging in, and then his baby and like this wheelie cart thing comes charging in, and the wife is in there trying to get the kids out. He was really flustered by it. It turned into this kind of comical thing, but just a reminder to maybe eliminate those distractions ahead of time. For your backdrop, consider a branded backdrop, kind of like Kasha has for virtual Zoom interviews. Nothing too distracting. Again, check what's visible behind you before you go live, and just make sure that it's appropriate for the context. Any questions? All right, so earlier we talked about these bridging techniques. So these are ways that when you are in the middle of a conversation with a reporter, having an interview, you can pivot back to what you actually want to say. So if it's a loaded or negative question, you can bring it back to your key message by saying what's most important for people to understand. Or we talked about earlier, not talking about information that you don't know, or speaking on behalf of another organization. So it's reasonable to say, I don't have that number or I don't have that stat in front of me, but what I can tell you is, and then continue to go back to your key messages. Or you can also use what I really want to emphasize is, or I can't speculate on that, but here's where things stand today. So these are just some of the techniques that you can use to, again, bring back to your key messages if you can tell that a interview is kind of getting off track. These are also really great to practice. So when you're practicing, you're saying your key messages out loud, when you're practicing for those kind of worst case scenario questions, it's always good to practice saying these out loud so that you're familiar with them if it has to come to it. Common mistakes. So Kasha again touched on some of this with off the record and no comment. Saying no comment will make you sound guilty, makes you sound evasive. There are other things that you can say instead of no comment. You could say, I can't speak to that specific detail. Here's what I can share. I'm so sorry, I don't have information about that at the moment, but if I do, I will let you know. Again, no comment just makes you seem like you have something to hide. Speaking off the record casually, again, assume everything is on the record. Speaking out of context, so don't share assumptions about other departments or agencies. The thing I really like to harp on is repeating a negative phrase or just using negative verbiage in general. Stick to the positive and using positive verbs for those. Sometimes it can be hard not to get argumentative or defensive, especially if a reporter is trying to go into a gotcha question. But just remember that you are representing your organization, your agency, and so stay calm. If you get defensive and argumentative, that just gives them more to work with. That is fodder for them. They love it. So just remain calm, breathe, and use those bridging techniques that we touched on. Rambling past your answer, the longer you talk, the more risk you introduce at talking about things that are not your key messages. You can answer and then stop, and the silence is okay. And if the reporter has another question, they will ask you.
So, two real quick things to add to that. A lot of times you'll watch news interviews and you'll hear the person say, like I said before, if you are doing a television story, they are going to cut up your talking points. So referencing something you said at a different point in time sometimes just makes for a bad story if that ends up being the best talking point, right? So just consider every talking point you make with television as an independent statement that's going to get glued together in a very different way. It could be the case. And then Katie mentions this arguing or getting defensive. There are certain reporters who, if they cannot establish a relationship with you or your PIO, they cannot get an answer to a toughie story. They will wait for you to come out of your meetings, or they will find you at your business location if you're an elected official, and they will try their best to do the story. Again, my recommendation is that you proactively address situations early and take control of the messaging. If you do find yourself in a situation where a media person comes in an unexpected location and timing, you can either answer using the talking points that you have developed, because if they're getting to the point where they're finding you, you know this situation exists, right? This is not a surprise to anybody. Make sure you have those talking points ready and that you stick to those talking points, or ask them to very calmly say, I'm happy to sit down with you. Please schedule a time with our communications person and we'll sit down and have a conversation. And then try to calmly make your way out of the immediate situation. So again, be prepared, because if they're calling about it and they're calling again and again, usually people aren't taken by surprise until the media person has nowhere else to go with the story. It's going to happen.
And that's a situation where you might be tempted to say no comment. And again, we do not say that. Thank you, Kasha. So if a situation turns sensitive, so kind of getting more into crisis communication, which is a whole other ballgame. But again, you want to pause and loop in leadership. Let your PIO know what's going on. Stick to the verified facts only, what you know, and what you can prove to the reporter. Definitely designate one spokesperson. Sometimes you get someone who has been through a media training and someone who has not been through a media training, and they are both going to tell some different sides of the story to the reporter. You definitely want to designate that single spokesperson and keep them updated and informed on the talking points and the situation. Going back to Kasha's point of speaking from the heart, showing empathy first and facts second. So if a fatality happened, you wouldn't want to jump into the facts and jump into how you responded. You want to show that empathy first, because again, it kind of shows as a defensive, guilty maneuver. Any questions so far? So we will have a section at the end here just to go over some other things, but some key takeaways for us from this presentation. If there's anything that we want you to walk away with, it's on this slide. know your key messages before you're asked. If something happens, think of those key messages, jot them down, talk with your PIO, get those facts straight, and use those bridging techniques to get back to your message. Don't let the reporter steer you away from what you want to talk about. You are in control of the situation. Build those relationships before the story breaks. They definitely pay off during a story, and especially if a crisis happens. So keep your media list updated, make those introductions, know who covers your beat in your jurisdiction. Speed and honesty build trust, and silence and guessing erode it. So being quick, even if you do not know the answer, just let them know. I don't know that right now, but I am happy to get back with you. Being transparent, builds that credibility. Assume everything is on the record. Remember, do not ever assume anything is off the record. Always be careful with what you say, especially right up until the last minute that the reporter packs up, walks off, or ends the call. And then this last one is pretty important too. Pair your earned media with your owned and social channels, especially if it's a positive, uplifting story that you want to share. If you are the person in charge of your content creation, this is easy content that you can just grab and repost. And it builds credibility of other people talking about you in a positive way.
And Katie, we have a question here in the chat from Mayor Scholl. The references to having a PIO. What if you're too small to have a PIO? The situations will exist, right? There will be a time when media will reach out. There will be times when you need to get messages across. So whether you have a designated PIO or you have those responsibilities assigned to a person on staff, the key is to have the right person to know what to do when the situation happens. So without a PIO, you're probably not being proactive. But if you are reactive or know how to manage a situation, if it happens, then you'll be on the right track. So I would definitely ensure your PIO type major responsibilities are within somebody's job description and that they receive proper training and support to fulfill that if the need arises.
So we'll jump into questions, but going off of what Kasha said, this, FEMA PIO training will give you, it's a course, right, Kasha? And it gives you some training into, speaking with the media and kind of just, expands on a lot of what we said today.
So it's from NIMS. I'm sure most of you, especially our officers on the call, are NIMS trained. This is the PIO course set that you can take. It's really good foundational information. I encourage our elected officials to take it too. So you know what to do in an emergency situation in particular, but in general, how to respond to larger situations and how to coordinate that within your incident command center. So it's very helpful. They have in-person classes as well. Nicholas Thorpe is one of my favorite instructors in the state, but they're free. So let that be a bonus point. They're free. Most of them are online, and the in-person trainings are very valuable and get you that role play experience.
This is also a part of our Centralina Learns program, professional development. So we have a couple other events coming up. Our planning department is putting on a session in September about mobility hubs. Mobility hubs are the spots where you use one source of transportation and hop on another. So maybe it's a train to a bus to a bike. And then we also have one in October that our economic development team is putting on about data centers and what you need to know. Jumping back to media relations, though, are there any other questions that we can answer for you guys? Any highlights, anything that you would like to see from us in the future about this topic?
I'd like to see this type of class continue maybe on an annual basis. So as you have folks coming onto your organization, we're able to offer those basics. We'll of course put it online as well. And then we'll work to develop some curriculum that's a little more advanced and a little more interactive. But getting your folks to understand these basic concepts is very helpful in a lot of roles.
And we'll have this recording and this slide deck sent out to you guys in the next couple of days. So you will have the resources and can share it with some others.
I just realized that I was told last night by some folks from a community group that they are going to attend our Board of Aldermen meeting tonight. And it's probably about a data center that's being built in our area. And I thought just a few seconds ago, oh, I need to tell the mayor and I need to tell the town manager to expect that.
Beautiful.
So,
Great way to apply what you've learned. Yes.
yeah.
Keep everybody informed. And they might be on top of it and they'll provide you information, right? But just having that
Advance notice helps.
Yeah. I know Peter will appreciate it.
Oh, yeah.
Yep. And of course, you can always call. Katie and I are available to talk through some situations with you if you ever need it, and direct you to some folks that can provide advanced level help. We would love to help you, but we just have a limited amount of time, so we're not always able to get in depth or do the writing or outreach ourselves. But we're certainly open to help talk through situations.
Well, our group is very supportive of it for the town of Spencer and for the town of East Spencer, who will be impacted. And this is, there's a moratorium on anything going forward, but this is not included in that moratorium. So there's a lot of heated discussions going on. And I have made the public statement that I am in support of it. So I do get people calling me to ask me why and what I see as the value and what do you think about this and what do you think about that. And so I'm trying to be sure that I give them factual information for anything that I share.
Well, and we've had a few folks mention they're interested in the relationship between social media and media. And that could be an excellent topic for an upcoming session that we do. You put out a statement on your social media to your constituents, and all of a sudden it becomes a media story, and how those things can work together or against each other would be a great topic. So I thank you all for that suggestion as well.
Related, I think, to that same topic, I am wondering if y'all have any guidance about written responses versus live responses to interview requests. I know in our community, we have certain instances where maybe board members or council members will respond to questions online through Facebook comments and that sort of thing. So, do you have any guidance for how to ensure kind of your key messages get across, I guess, in a written format rather than live interviews, or anything folks should keep in mind there?
It can be a sticky situation because you want elected officials to feel comfortable responding in their point of view. And I hope that they understand that the position the organization takes is the position of the collective board. So if it's before an issue, I would approach it with just the facts that you're giving the board or that you're giving the community as part of the presentation, if there is a presentation, right? So sticking to the facts and being neutral before decisions are made. Once decisions are made, either by the manager, the board chair, as you're directed, right? Because you're not making the decisions, you're just communicating them, which is a lot of fun sometimes. So once the decision is made, it's the representation, it's the view of the entirety of the board or the folks that are given those roles as decision makers, and you're just communicating that information. But you're going to have situations where council members or board members are not fully aligned, and they would be responsible. I would make sure your manager has your back in saying, your role is to support the organization and the organization's stance, and they're free to have their own opinion, but those would need to be scheduled um, outside of what you're responsible for, right? Like you wouldn't need to do their individual statements or their individual interviews. But it's nice if they let you know that they're doing them. And then also it becomes a matter between the board chair and vice chair and the manager for the board to resolve any sort of conflict between it happens that you have board members that go out and campaign against what the full board decides. And that's a sticky situation that you don't need to find yourself in the middle of. So stick to the facts, keep it simple before a decision, after the decision, communicate what the decision is, and just stick to the facts.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah.
And that kind of goes into a little bit of social media policy as well, and having a social media policy for those people and outlining kind of your guidelines. That opens a whole can of worms, though.
That's a great
Also,
point.
I want to share, I found it to be the case that with big stories that have a lot of community interest, employees will not speak on the matter, but sometimes the employees' spouses take to social media, and that's something we can include in the social. I heard somebody say, that happens, right? Like your spouse or a trusted friend of somebody who works for your organization goes on social media to share a point of view or to deliver information that they have that the rest of the community doesn't. And you got to lock that down quickly. So I think it's perfectly fine to have some serious conversations about that and the distinction between public and private information.
Well, I guess since we're on the Facebook knowledge here, what is current industry practice or professionalism when it comes to whether or not you allow responses on Facebook posts or not? Is it a good practice to limit or turn off postings for anything or that you post on a social media site such as Facebook or whatever? Or should there still be an option for people to post responses to it? And if so, is it dependent on the information, or does it just need to be a set standard across the entire page?
It's my recommendation that you have a very clear policy of where your organization stands on that. It used to be the case that you would want to respond to every message. If people are commenting on your post, you would want to engage with it and continue the conversation. And in the past, it was the case that somebody that was kind of against you on this issue becomes your champion on another one. So you want to form that relationship. But it gets more difficult based on the type of discussions we're having. So that would be a discussion between you and your lawyer and your board chair and your manager to decide if your policy is comments on and you want to turn them off. You need to have a very clear why. Also remember, anything that happens on social media is public record, so you'll need to save and track the responses you have for some period of time. But Katie, what are you seeing in the research as well?
Yeah, I would say when you turn off the ability for people to comment and use their voice, or if you start deleting comments, it can make you look guilty and it can make you look like you are hiding something. So I always recommend to never delete comments, never. I personally don't like turning the comments feature off. And if someone does comment something, it's certainly you want to make sure that your response is public, and you can always say, "Hi, we'd love to learn more," or "Hi, I'm so sorry you feel about this. We're private message. We're going to take this offline." You want to take those conversations offline and have them over email or private messaging, so that it's not on where everyone can see it. And it sounds like a social media kind of Centralina Learns would be beneficial for you guys, maybe like a social media 101. And we could certainly touch on that, but I think general policy is, when you stop commenting, when you don't allow people to comment or delete comments, it gives them more to talk about, and it kind of makes people angry and appears like you don't want them to be discussing this amongst themselves.
And are you all familiar with, well, I shouldn't ask this question to everybody, but UNC School of Government has a blog called the Coates Cannon blog, and it is their official position on questions like that. And I'm going to post a couple articles in the chat related to social media. But Shannon, I think Shannon is still there. Shannon at the School of Government has kind of been the authority on it. Developing a social media policy, you have to be very careful because there have been many times when governments have been taken to court over social media policies. It is illegal to delete comments. So you're either comments on or off, but you cannot delete if people are throwing profanity or if they're talking about things that are unrelated to the post. I've seen organizations hide the post, but not delete it. That would be, again, up to you and your manager and your lawyer to determine what is right for your organization. So I wish we had a more fluid answer that would help you navigate each situation, but really it's such a litigious thing that you need to have a clear why if you're changing things. And by the way, that goes for if you're an elected official and you have a Facebook page related to your campaign, those fall under public records laws, I believe. So you can't delete messages there either, and you'll need to keep them, you'll need to keep the comments indefinitely.
Any other questions?
I'm going to put our email addresses in the chat. Feel free to reach out if you need anything. We're happy to help.
Well, thank you very much. Appreciate the learning opportunity.
Always. All right. Take care, everyone. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.